Okay, everyone, we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. The speaker order. Did you already do the speaker order?
No.
Okay, so the speaker order speaking first will be United States Attorney Martin Estrada, Martinestrada. Speaking next, Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer, Toddspitzer. Next will be FBI Special Agent in Charge Ted Docks, Teddocks. Finally, the IRS Criminal Investigation Acting Special Agent in Charge Linda Nguyen, LindaNguyen. And then there'll be a Q&A afterwards. And so I think we're ready to begin.
Good morning. My name is Martin Estrada. I'm the United States Attorney. I'm here today joined by our local and federal law enforcement partners and leaders to announce a major public corruption case against Orange County politician Andrew Doe. Andrew Doe was a member of the Board of Supervisors of Orange County. The charges we announce today are very serious. They involve a scheme to steal COVID-19 relief funds and to receive bribe payments. The scheme essentially functioned like Robin Hood in reverse. Mr. Doe and his conspirators stole money from the poor to give to themselves. And this money was intended to provide meals to the people who needed them most in our community, older adults and people with disabilities. Instead, the money was stolen by Mr. Doe and his conspirators. Of the $19.3 million that was intended to provide meals to those most in need in our community at a time when we were going through a crisis, when those meals were most needed by everyone, including those most in need, only 15% went to the people who needed them. The rest was stolen through this conspiracy and used to pay bribes. Today, we take a major step towards justice and accountability. Mr. Doe has agreed to plead guilty to a charge of conspiracy to commit bribery. He's also agreed, effective today, to resign his position with the Board of Supervisors of Orange County. Through this investigation, we seized $2.4 million in illicit proceeds generated through the scheme. And Mr. Doe has agreed to forfeit his rights to any of that money. In addition, Mr. Doe agrees to forfeit 2 properties, one in Santa Ana and one in Tustin, related to the scheme and purchased using proceeds from this scheme. Let me describe the charges and give a bit more background in terms of the case. As a member of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, Mr. Doe had great authority. He had authority in administering a budget of $9 billion. Mr. Doe represented District 1, which included the cities of Cypress, Huntington Beach, Fountain Valley, Westminster, Garden Grove, La Palma, and others. Mr. Doe served on the board since 2015. He is the longest serving board member currently. During this time, Mr. Doe served as chair of the board and vice chair of the board and had great authority in terms of his time on the board. The public corruption scheme that we announced today spanned a long period of time, 2020 through this year. To carry out this scheme, Mr. Doe used his authority as a county supervisor to steer $9.3 million in funds that were meant for COVID relief to an organization known as Viet America Society, or VAS. This was a purported nonprofit. The money was paid to Viet America Society through various contracts from mid-2020 through 2023. While steering these funds, federal and state COVID funds, to Viet America Society, Mr. Doe did not disclose that one of the leaders of this group was his daughter, Rhiannon Doe. The $9.3 million that was sent to Viet America Society was meant to pay for meals to older adults and people with disabilities. Mr. Doe made sure the money went to this group, and that was the bulk of the relief money that Mr. Doe was tasked with distributing. In doing so, Mr. Doe publicly touted the meals program as a benefit to his constituents. He was featured in videos saying that the organization was providing 2,700 meals per week to the needy. That was not true. In fact, of the $9.3 million that was sent to Viet America Society to provide meals to the poor, only 15% was used for that purpose. The rest was stolen and used for bribes. Let me tell you how the bribes worked. Shortly after receiving its first payment from the county, Viet America Society began directing money to Mr. Doe's daughters. They did this through indirect payments. They would send money to vendors, which were purportedly providing services, but in fact helping to facilitate bribe payments to Mr. Doe's family. These vendors included an air conditioning company and a restaurant. In total, Mr. Doe and his family received over $700,000 in bribe payments. When a public official engages in this sort of egregious misconduct, we all lose. Mr. Doe was put in office to champion the needs of his constituents. The hardworking people of his district deserved honest representation, but that's not what they got. Instead, they got a politician who put his own needs above those of the people in his community. Mr. Doe was an example of the American dream. He came to this country, he worked hard, he achieved success, he was elected to public office, and he threw it all away to enrich himself and his family. Perhaps most tragic in this entire case is the fact that the people he stole from, the money he took, was meant for those who are most vulnerable in our community. With this case, we are now taking a major step towards justice and accountability. Mr. Doe has agreed to plead guilty to a count of conspiracy to commit bribery. That count carries a statutory maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. He's also agreed to resign today from the Board of Supervisors for the County of Orange. In addition, we seized through the investigation over $2.4 million, and Mr. Doe has agreed to forfeit that money. Mr. Doe has also agreed to forfeit any interest in 2 properties purchased using this money, including a property in Tustin that was the source of bribe payments and put in the name of his daughter, Rhiannon Doe, and a property in Santa Ana. Finally, as to Rhiannon Doe, she has entered a diversion agreement in which she admits to engaging in criminal misconduct and agrees to cooperate in this investigation, which I should say remains and is ongoing, in exchange for not being prosecuted criminally in this case. Let me conclude. As you've repeatedly seen, my office is committed to rooting out corruption throughout our district. The public is entitled to officials who operate honestly and faithfully. That didn't happen in this case. My office and our partners, local and federal law enforcement, are committed to making sure we combat corruption in all its forms. I want to give thanks where thanks is due for this case. First and foremost, I want to thank the Orange County District Attorney's Office for its work here. This was a joint investigation with the Orange County District Attorney's Office. Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer is here to my right, and his attorneys in his office, I cross-designated as Special Assistant United States Attorneys, worked tirelessly on this investigation. Our agencies joined forces to investigate and prosecute this matter so that Mr. Doe could swiftly be brought to justice. That partnership has brought about this result we announced today. I also want to thank the federal law enforcement agencies who joined us in this investigation. That includes the FBI, who helped lead this investigation, and the support we received from the IRS, FDIC, Office of Inspector General, and the Department of Education, Office of Inspector General. Finally, let me give appreciation and thanks to the prosecution team that helped bring about this result and will move forward this ongoing investigation. That includes Assistant United States Attorneys Charles Pell, Bradley Merritt, and also Tara Van Veer, and also Deputy District Attorneys and cross-designated Special Assistant United States Attorneys Avery Harrison, Ashley Thiener, and L.J. Berger. I will now bring to the podium District Attorney Todd Spitzer.
First of all, I'd like to thank United States Attorney Martin Estrada for his phenomenal leadership and the message he's conveyed consistently throughout our region and his jurisdiction, that political corruption will not be tolerated. I'm extremely proud of the work of the United States attorneys that have already been introduced, and the fact that 3 of my prosecutors from the Orange County District Attorney's Office have been allowed to be cross-designated as special federal prosecutors for the purpose of this investigation and prosecution. While millions of Americans were dying from COVID, Orange County Supervisor Andrew Doe was the fox guarding the henhouse. He raided millions in federal pandemic relief funds and orchestrated the money intended to feed the elderly and ailing residents to instead fill the pockets of insiders, himself, and his loved ones, his family members. From a Vietnamese refugee who came here with a Pan-American bag and a bunch of dictionaries in different languages because he did not know where his family would land after the fall of Saigon. Supervisor Doe, with all his experience and his education, concocted a public persona of a hometown hero who had achieved the American dream and was guiding his constituents through the uncertainty and fear of a global pandemic. His dream of America has now become a nightmare for Orange County taxpayers as greed and arrogance replaced the public servant that he had portrayed himself to be. While local governments across the nation were trying to save lives, federal relief dollars came flooding in from both the Trump and the Biden administration, creating the perfect opportunity for a money grab while no one was watching. The conspiracy was born, and soon Supervisor Doe was robbing the taxpayers blind, literally stealing taxpayer dollars out of the mouths of the most vulnerable Orange County residents during our most vulnerable time, a worldwide pandemic. Instead of food, precious taxpayers were spent buying a $1 million home for his youngest daughter, Rhiannon, providing bribe payments to both of his adult daughters, paying American Express bills, paying his own property taxes on 2 different homes that he owned, one in Westminster and one in North Tustin. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal relief money was withdrawn from ATMs in cash. Meanwhile, those who needed the relief went without. No one is above the law in Orange County. And the U.S. Attorney and I, along with our federal partners, refuse to allow any elected official to violate the trust of the voters that have given the authority to them to watch over their hard-earned taxpayer dollars. This joint investigation and the resulting prosecutions would not be possible without our partnership. Corruption of any kind will not be tolerated. And these charges should serve as a very powerful warning to all elected officials that their actions have consequences, and justice will be swift and justice will be decisive. Today's plea agreements represent the first Orange County conviction of an Orange County supervisor in 50 years. And that's why it is such a dark cloud today. As public servants, we are stewards of public safety as well as public dollars. Many of you know I'm a former Orange County supervisor who sat on that board for 12 years. And now as the elected district attorney, it was critical for us to make this case quick and decisive to stop taxpayer dollars from continuing to be pilfered, and to ensure that Supervisor Doe agreed that the taxpayers will not be on the hook for his county pension that he accrued while engaging in this criminal conduct, and that his resignation will stop his salary and benefits immediately. This was all going on while he was bragging publicly about providing, because of his leadership, 2,700 meals a day. Yet the elderly were dying. The elderly were starving. The elderly didn't know they were going to get their last meal. They didn't know if they were going to lose their homes. They didn't know whether they could see the sunrise come up tomorrow. And yet, through this deceptive and complicated web, Supervisor Doe benefited personally. This is why you'll see when you get the documents in a side agreement with my office, I've demanded that Supervisor Doe resign immediately. And I also demanded, and he agreed and signed, that he would forfeit his pension that he had accrued since June of 2020 when the conspiracy began. I was elected in 1996, my first time to the Board of Supervisors, in the wake of the Orange County bankruptcy. And when we ran for office as supervisors, we committed to helping the county recover and be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. I'm literally incensed and, quite frankly, disgusted that when this money flowed in from the federal government, that Supervisor Doe, selfishly and in concert with other people, did everything he could to benefit while other people were crying out for help. That, to me, is disgusting. This investigation is far from over. And rest assured, neither myself or the U.S. Attorney and his team will rest until we hold everyone responsible in this conspiracy accountable, and that we recover every possible taxpayer dollar that is still outstanding, that was literally stolen out of the mouths of our most vulnerable residents. At this time, I'd like to introduce Special Agent in Charge, Ted Dox.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning, everyone. As stated, my name is Ted Dox, Special Agent in Charge of FBI Los Angeles' Criminal Division. Corrupt acts by any elected public official undermines all citizens to whom they serve. These public officials have a responsibility to implement programs and policies that will benefit all people. Their role is not to squander money, solicit bribes, or to steer funds to organizations or persons wherein a coordinated effort allows those funds to make their way to family members or friends. When actions like these occur, the integrity of local, state, and federal government is severely tarnished. Public officials conducting illegal acts destroys the reputation of all elected officials, many of whom serve in their positions honestly, and it also erodes the trust and confidence of citizens representing their communities. And when citizens lose trust in governments, this diminishes our democratic society in which we cherish. Today's plea is another exclamation point to the FBI's commitment to ensuring that local, state, and federally elected public officials perform their duties with honesty, integrity, and commitment to all constituents in which they serve. Anyone with information about public corruption should report it directly to the FBI by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI or electronically by going online to tips.fbi.gov. Our commitment to hold corrupt public officials accountable is steadfast, and we will continue to protect citizens in our communities who depend on us. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to Acting Special Agent in Charge, Linda Nguyen from IRS.
Good morning. I am Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Linda Nguyen, from IRS Criminal Investigation, Los Angeles Field Office. Combating public corruption is one of the most important roles federal law enforcement agencies play in our local communities. Andrew Doe, in his elected position as an Orange County Supervisor, was entrusted to ensure taxpayer dollars were used responsibly and for the intended purposes. Instead, at a time when his constituents needed the most during the COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Doe exploited his position on the Orange County Board of Supervisors to influence and channel the funds to close associates of the Viet America Society. In addition, accepting bribes that were used to purchase homes, pay property taxes, and even pay fictitious income to his family members. Unfortunately for Mr. Doe, financial transactions leave a paper trail. IRS criminal investigation is the best in the world at finding and following those leads. And along with some great work by our investigative partners, we were able to find the proof of where and how those funds were spent. The selfish and negligent actions demonstrated by Mr. Doe violated not only the trust placed in him by the public, but also the trust placed in him by the federal, state, and county governments. Mr. Doe will now be held accountable for his actions. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Martin Estrada.
I'll give brief remarks in Spanish and then we'll do Q&A. Buenos días, mi nombre es Martín Estrada, soy fiscal federal. Hoy anunciamos cargos criminales contra el político del condado de Orange, Andrew Doe. El señor Doe fue miembro de la Junta de Supervisores del condado de Orange. Fue elegido en 2015 y ha tenido ese cargo por casi 10 años. El señor Doe participó en un esquema de corrupción. El año pasado pasó contratos, mandaron millones de dólares a un grupo que se suponía daba comida a los necesitados, incluyendo los adultos mayores y los incapacitados. En realidad, ese grupo se quedó con el dinero y pagó sobornos al señor Doe. De los 9.3 millones de dólares que recibió ese grupo para dar a otros que lo necesitaban, solo 15% fue gastado en comida para los necesitados. El resto fue robado. En total, el señor Doe recibió más que $700,000 en sobornos. Hoy empezamos el primer paso a la justicia. Con este anuncio, el señor Doe acepta renunciar a su posición con la Junta de Supervisores del Condado de Orange. También el señor Doe acepta declararse culpable a este cargo de corrupción. Y el señor Doe acepta perder todas las ganancias ilícitas de este esquema, incluyendo dinero, cuentas y propiedad. La corrupción no tiene lugar en nuestro pueblo. Nuestra comunidad merece mejor. Por eso mi oficina, nuestros socios locales y federales, seguiremos haciendo todo posible para combatir la corrupción. We'll now do Q&A. Any questions?
What about Peter Pham?
The investigation is ongoing, and we're announcing charges today against Andrew Doe. We've also announced a resolution with his daughter, Rihanna Doe.
What about
Clarify,
okay.
his wife, Mr. Doe's wife, is a judge here in Orange County, and you indicated that some of the money was spent paying the property taxes. How did she benefit?
This is the first step in this investigation. We now have the elected official stepping down, accepting responsibility, accepting that he will plead guilty to a felony, conspiracy to commit bribery. We also have his daughter agreeing to cooperate fully in the investigation. We will continue to investigate every angle of this bribery scheme.
Do you believe
Yes.
his wife knew of any of the illegal activities?
She's been waiting very patiently.
Can you just describe in a little bit more detail exactly who was being bribed exactly for what? And a second question, you say 15% of the money was used for food programs. Can you describe a little bit how many people were fed compared with how many were supposed to be?
Well, it's a bribery scheme. Mr. Doe had the ability during COVID, during a pandemic, to use funds and use those in a discretionary manner to give to his constituents for necessary services. He chose to give the bulk of that money to Viet America Society, and he chose to give it purportedly for services to his constituents. What we saw through this case is that the bulk of that money did not make it to the constituents who needed it. Instead, it was used for illicit purposes. Yes?
How did your investigators come to first start looking into Viet America Society and Supervisor Doe's funding? And then have you found any action or inaction on county staff's part because they were able to get away with this for so long?
So this investigation began when we saw some reports in the media about issues surrounding the giving of money and contracts to Viet America Society. We work proactively in this office and with our partners in the district attorney's office. We don't sit around and just see reports come out. We take action when we see those reports. We brought our federal partners into the case to fully investigate, and we discovered this extensive and very troubling bribery scheme.
Can you walk us through what happens now? Did he already sign the plea agreement? Has he been in court? When will he be sentenced?
So he has agreed to plead guilty to a count of conspiracy to commit bribery. He has signed a plea agreement. That has been filed this morning. Now that it's been filed, he will now have to enter his plea of guilty to that charge. And with the plea agreement, he's agreeing to the forfeiture aspects I mentioned before, including the $2.4 million and the two properties in Tustin and Santa Ana. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is John Duan. I am the Vietnamese referee, and I'm a U.S. citizen right now. I want to hear, regarding about the construction in the Memorial Park and the issue by the tax dollar $1 million. And a lot of people come in by myself. I come in, I see, haven't done anything. And right now, in my view, I think probably cost about $150,000. I haven't heard anything regarding about it. What happened? And we want to hear to pay the memory, want to say thank to the who haven't, sacrificed their life in the war in Vietnam. So I want to hear your answer, please.
So as District Attorney Spitzer said, this is very painful for our community. This whole episode is very painful for our community to see someone who is living the American dream, had great success, was elected by his constituents on several occasions to represent them, yet he betrays that trust. Is very troubling to us. We saw that he sent over $10 million to Viet America Society, as you referenced, mostly for meals for those who were most in need, but also for this memorial. This investigation is not over. We are taking the first step on the path to justice and accountability, and we will follow every lead.
Mr. Estrada, when did it, so going through the timeline again, just following up on Michelle's question, did he surrender? When is he going to be in custody? Is he in custody?
So he has signed a plea agreement. He's not in custody. He will need to make an appearance and enter his plea of guilty. At that time, there'll be a decision as to whether he should be in custody or not. That is something that we address with the court, and we're not going to prejudge here. But then, once he pleads guilty, then there will have to be a date set for sentencing, at which time the judge will determine the appropriate sentence in this
And
case.
when is the court date, please?
No court date has been set. The plea agreement has been filed today. Now a date will be set for the entering of that plea agreement, and the judge and our staff will work together in terms of selecting the appropriate date.
Can you talk about the-
Yes, sir.
Did Rhiannon Doe admit wrongdoing, and is part of that agreement that she have to testify against potential other people you bring charges on, such as Peter Pan?
So as part of the agreement with Rhiannon Doe, she is admitted to criminal misconduct. She is required to forfeit all illicit gains. She is also required to fully cooperate in this investigation, whatever that cooperation entails.
And one more, if I may, do you believe that Andrew Doe's wife knew of any of this illicit activity?
The investigation is ongoing. I will not get into what I believe or not believe. The evidence will lead us to the right conclusions.
Can you talk about the potential
Yes, sir.
penalties
That's
that
yes, sir.
You mentioned, aside from Rhiannon Doe, that Andrew Doe's other daughter also received funds. How much money was that?
So we traced about $100,000 in money that was paid to one of his other daughters.
What's
What's
on the
happening
Amex?
with the seat, with Joe's seat now?
Someone was talking over you. Can you repeat your question?
What's going to happen with Andrew Doe's seat on the Board of Supervisors now? Will it remain empty, or
That is certainly not my role. Our role is to enforce the law and ensure accountability for public corruption.
Does Mr. Spitzer know?
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the range of penalties that go along with the crime that he was pleading guilty to?
Yes, he is pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit bribery. That charge carries a 5-year statutory maximum sentence. When the sentencing occurs, the court will consider all the factors present, the aggravating factors, the mitigating factors to determine the appropriate sentence.
Can you talk about how you came up with the bribery charge? Was there an explicit quid pro quo, maybe you found in a text message, or were there email exchanges, or was it just from testimony of witnesses? Can you talk about how you came about, to learn the bribery part of it?
Well, we traced the money, and we saw that we had a politician who's sending millions and millions of dollars to one particular organization. We saw services not being provided. And then we saw those monies being diverted into other companies, purported vendors, and then that money being directed to Mr. Doe's daughters.
Can you clarify once again the $700,000 he received in bribe payments, but he agreed to pay back $2.4 million? Can you just clarify those two issues?
Sure. So we determined through this investigation that he received, through his family, approximately $700,000 in bribe payments. This included monthly payments from some of those vendors, the air conditioning company, the restaurant, that were paid to the daughters. This also included a lump sum payment of about $360,000 that was used as a down payment for a $1 million home in Tustin, California. In total, that amount in terms of bribe payments was over $700,000. Now, the scheme involved far more money that was stolen from taxpayers, as we described. We traced $2.4 million from misappropriated funds. To the extent that Mr. Doe has any interest in that money, he has agreed to forfeit any of that interest.
Did his daughter, is there additional money his daughter is accused of stealing in this scheme? Is the $700,000 inclusive of what his daughter took, or is that in addition?
The $700,000 includes all the bribe payments we've been able to trace to Mr. Doe and his family. Yes.
Yes, I'm from Formosa TV, a Vietnamese community media. You said that the investigation going on when it incorporate. So will it be involve the vendors, the restaurants, the other receivers of the money, and the other elected official usually working together?
We will pursue every angle of this conspiracy. As I mentioned earlier, this was a very sophisticated conspiracy involving money going to different vendors, different entities. We will pursue all those leads. As you can see, we've got the joint forces of my office, the Orange County District Attorney's Office, federal law enforcement, FBI, IRS, Department of Education, FDIC. This will be a comprehensive, fully investigated matter.
Todd, could we talk to you about, Mr. Doe, I believe, was in the OCDA's office, correct? And I don't know the timing of all of this.
Mr. Doe in his career had been both a public defender for Orange County as well as a deputy district attorney. I can't tell you the exact years, Michelle.
So can you comment on just the fact that here we have a sitting supervisor who is now admitted to this, and a man who was charged with upholding the law here in Orange County as one of our DAs?
Well, I think Mr. Estrada and I have said the same thing several times in different ways. It is incredibly disappointing and unfathomable that somebody with that much power, influence, the positions he's held, would take that position of trust during our country's most vulnerable time, when his citizens were dying, when they needed meals, when they weren't sure where their next meal was coming from, that he instead feigned that there was 2,700 meals a week, put out a video to satisfy the public, hide the ball over there, while he was simultaneously funneling money to his daughters and bank accounts for personal use. That it's just unfathomable. And as we started to dig in with my team and the U.S. Attorney's team, and then we joined forces, what we put together, which we've talked about today, is quite frankly, I think the community is shocked and overwhelmed and surprised, because You take people in positions of trust that I've held and Mr. Estrada has held and many standing up here. We are stewards of the public trust. And Mr. Doe unequivocally broke the trust of the public.
Was there a grand jury investigation, Todd, as well?
I'm not at liberty to discuss the convening of grand juries. Those are confidential proceedings. So I'm not allowed to comment about that.
Was all this money from the discretionary fund? And can you, for the former supervisor, can you talk about, is it too easy, or how easy is it for him to direct this money to another agency like this without any oversight? Does he have free will to do what he wants with the discretionary fund?
Well, so Chip, there was multiple funds. The board during COVID, each supervisorial district of the 5 allocated roughly about $10 million in discretionary funds that did not require, when it was going to be allocated, any public vote or putting on a public agenda at the Board of Supervisors. That was a horrible mistake by the board and the County of Orange. That lack of oversight is unbelievable. And it obviously came back to haunt the actions of what Supervisor Doe did to the county. There were other monies, though, that were allocated as well, some from the CEO's office, another contract with VAS, that went on as well, but that did not involve the board except for a vote. So there was a combination of discretionary monies and then monies that came through and were approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Fair to say most of it was from the discretionary fund?
It's fair to say it's really a lot. These monies were commingled over a period of several years. So tracing the discretionary, the Doe money from the county money that got board approval, you can go through, and the accountants and others forensically have gone through and done the tracing of these monies. But the fact of the matter is, irrespective of the color of the money, whether it was voted on by the board or discretionary, it's all green. And it was funneled into inappropriate uses. And that's the key. Whether it was discretionary is irrelevant in terms of the misuse of it. It's all green for purposes of the criminality.
Okay, we'll have one more question.
Yeah,
Last question.
my question, we focused about you play the supervisor living. In principle, living in the Westminster City. But the searching from the FBI and IRS, why don't haven't anybody search his house in the Westminster?
Okay, this is all part of, as you heard Mr. Estrada and I say repeatedly, this is on an ongoing investigation. We are absolutely committed, as you can tell by our pronouncements today, to ensuring that there's justice. I want to publicly apologize to you as the district attorney and elected official representing 3.3 million people in this county, that what has happened with the Vietnam Memorial in Miles Square Park is an absolute shame. I am very, very, very apologetic. Our Vietnam vets deserve to have these things built and rely on it, just like our veterans cemetery. I'm very sorry, sir, that this has occurred in your community. And I think I'll close my comments. I'm sure Mr. Estrada would want to say something to close and end this event. That's what this is all about. It is the absolute miscarriage of justice for projects and programs that people need, that people rely on, that people, whether it's through starvation or medical care or understanding that they'll have something recognizing their service in the military. We have the largest population of Vietnamese Americans living outside of the country of Vietnam here in Orange County. The Vietnamese community is a proud community. It's an honest community. It's a stand-up community. And Mr. Doe emerged out of the flames of the fall of Saigon to become a leader of the community. And he completely betrayed that trust. And that's why we're here today, to do justice for your community and all taxpayers.
Okay, thank you very much. The press release is out. We will have a Vietnamese language version of the press release that we will publish shortly. And I think that's that. So
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
And there is a shortcut to get out of here, so ask me and I'll let